All right, today we're going to open the pages of a pretty startling book from the 19th century. We're taking a journey into a world that existed completely in the shadows of Gilded Age glamour. We are diving deep into Darkness and Daylight, a book that took an absolutely unflinching look at the hidden and frankly desperate corners of 1890s New York City.
Okay, let's just jump right into this. To really get the world we're about to enter, you have to wrap your head around the sheer crushing pressure of it all. The book describes parts of the city so packed with people that each person had less space to their name than a body in a cemetery plot. Just let that sink in for a second. This wasn't just being crowded, this was a compression of life, of poverty, of struggle, all crammed into these impossibly small spaces, all fueled by massive waves of immigration and the non-stop demands of industrialization. And this right here, this is the core idea of the whole book. It argues that there were two completely different New Yorks living on the same small island. You had the Daylight City, the city of mansions, of booming commerce. And then you had the Darkness City, of tenements and just pure survival. For this explainer, we're going to step almost entirely into that darkness, to see the lives of the people that the daylight really never touched.
So our first stop is the tenement apartment. But you have to understand, for countless women and children, this wasn't just home. No, it was also the factory floor. It was a place where the struggle to live was measured out in stitches and pennies, from long before the sun ever came up until hours after it set.
$1. That's it. That was the price a woman was paid for sewing an entire dozen pairs of overalls. I mean, can you even imagine the labor, the speed you'd have to work at, the absolute physical exhaustion of putting together 12 heavy garments, just to earn that single dollar? It was this relentless, grinding cycle that just had no end in sight.
And this quote, wow, it gets right to the heart of that reality. Surviving wasn't something you did on your own. It was a family business. These are the words of a mother, and they show just how desperately she relied on her little kids, Ginny and Mame. Their tiny, nimble fingers weren't just a help. They were essential assets in the family's daily battle for money.
And listen, this wasn't some rare, isolated case. This was the system. The book takes us into another apartment where Taylor is working, and right there on the floor, next to him, is his 5-year-old daughter, Nettie. Her entire day, every day, is spent doing one single, monotonous, but crucial task, picking all the loose threads off the coats her father has just finished sewing.
You know, her father's words are just chilling in how practical they are. Nettie is good help. There's no emotion there, just this grim acceptance that his child's labor is an absolute necessity. And then there's that last hanging phrase, she care not to go. The thought is just left unfinished, but it implies she doesn't care to go outside to play. Her childhood has been completely sacrificed to that pile of coats.
All right, now we're going to go even deeper. We're leaving the cramped tenement rooms, and we're heading out into the streets after midnight. This is when the city's darkness really took on an even more dangerous, more perilous character. This was a time when all the desperation and danger were right out in the open.
The landscape itself was just built for ruin. It seemed like every other basement housed what they called a stale beer dive. These were places selling the literal dregs and foam skimmed from the floors of proper saloons, all for just pennies a glass. It was the absolute cheapest way to escape, offering this temporary numbness that, more often than not, just led to an even deeper fall.
And the sound of the night, it was just this chaotic symphony of decay. You'd hear the jingle of broken pianos and the twang of cheap fiddles spilling out from these once grand homes that were now crumbling into tenements. It was the sound of a kind of forced, frantic joy that was layered right on top of this foundation of deep, deep despair.
The author's description of the women on these streets is, well, it's stark. The language is definitely from its time, the 1890s, but it paints this absolutely brutal picture of individuals who are trapped in the most degrading and dangerous work you can imagine. Their faces, as the author puts it, telling a story of just unspeakable hardship.
So here's the really crucial point. The children were everywhere. You couldn't escape them, and they couldn't escape the effect of this environment. They weren't just seeing it, they were absorbing everything. Every grimy deal, every desperate act. The author calls it a pollution that they were just breathing in, a trap that was shaping their entire future before they even had a chance to have one.
So when you're faced with this kind of overwhelming darkness, with a system that seems totally designed to crush a person's spirit, a question just naturally comes to mind. Was there any way out? Was there any hope at all?
So let's take a look at the efforts of the people who actually dared to bring a little bit of light into these darkest of corners.
We're talking about the reformers, the missionaries, the philanthropists who just refused to believe that this world was completely beyond saving.
There was this whole ecosystem of aid, no matter how small it seemed. You had city missions offering food and a place for the homeless to find some faith, just a moment of peace from the streets. The Children's Aid Society, they focused on the most vulnerable, trying to rescue kids from a life of crime. You had college-educated women who set up settlements, living right there in the poor wards to help people directly. And then you had these all-night missionaries literally walking the darkest streets, trying to pull people back from the brink. And these efforts, they could have a profound, deeply personal impact. This quote, it's from a man giving his testimony at a mission meeting, and it just captures the raw power of these interventions. For somebody who felt completely and utterly lost, the simple act of being offered a different way, a different path, could feel like a genuine rescue, a moment of real, life-altering transformation. But we have to be realistic here. As heroic as these efforts were, they were like trying to bail out the ocean with a thimble. They were treating the symptoms, right? The addiction, the homelessness, the crime, but they weren't fixing the disease, which was this fundamentally broken and unequal society. The darkness was just too immense, too powerful, to be pushed back by a few scattered lanterns.
And this brings us right back around to the central, haunting theme of the book. This unbridgeable chasm, this great divide that separated the two New Yorks.
I mean, just look at this side by side. It captures the divide perfectly. On the very same streets, two completely different realities were existing at the same time. The world of daylight moved with this easy, dignified pace, wrapped in expensive clothes, their minds totally free from care. And at the exact same moment, the world of darkness was rushing past them, their faces etched with worry, their bodies worn down by hard work and bad food, their minds just in a constant state of turmoil. And at the end of the day, this is the question that darkness and daylight really leaves us with. And it's a question that goes way beyond 1890s New York, doesn't it? It forces us to ask about the chasms, the great divides that still exist in our own time, between what we all see in the daylight and what remains hidden away in the dark.